Thank you everyone for joining today for our Building Smarter Workflows with New and Existing Features. My name is Emma Montgomery, and I recognize some of you in the chat, but if you haven't met me, very nice to meet you. I'm part of the Customer Onboarding and Success team, and today I am joined by Jeff Gonzalez, Senior Account Executive. We thought that we were talking the other day about some new and existing features that we've seen repetition in calls. We figured that why not we host a webinar to showcase them. So thank you so much for joining me, Jeff, today.
Thanks for having me, Emma. Yeah, the initial plan was to cover newer features, show how we can apply some of them, but we stumbled upon so many cool use cases and creative ways that people are using some of the features that we have already that we thought it would be important to also highlight the way that you can configure some of those for yourself. So hopefully you get some inspiration on today's webinar. Let me figure out how to get to the next slide here. Cool. So to set the stage, I want to align on how we think about features first. We'll obviously go over a list of the features that we'll cover, and then we'll dive into the product. If that sounds fair, let's just go ahead and understand what I mean about feature thought alignment. Features all the way down to rudimentary elements, if you will. These are things that basically you use if you played with Legos as a kid. They're like your Lego blocks, things that you use to build all the way over to actually having a solution in production on the very right. That's obviously what we're all after, but rudimentary elements you can think of as field types, whether it's status, due date, or maybe an automation trigger, an automation action, or a formula function. These are the things that you put together. And oftentimes we'll see very repeatable configurations of these rudimentary elements to form what we would call design patterns, right? These are reusable combinations of those pieces. And so an example of this could be when your status field goes to complete, have that be an automation trigger for when a record matches conditions, and the action could be send a Slack. It's a fairly straightforward one that we see often. You can also have an application of each of your team members with an assigned to field in each of those records that actually matches the individual users that are in SmartSuite. And that way, when you use a linked record to be able to assign them to a task, you can look up that assigned to value and you can filter by who that current user is. And then you can use that at a scheduled time, produce a certain kind of task. These last two are ones that we're going to cover today. And I'll explain the context of it, but I just want you to be familiar with rudimentary element and design pattern and how we get all the way over to that functional solution. Cool. Emma, anything to add here?
No, I think in our webinar today, we'll highlight some of these points. And if you have any questions on what some of this means or want to continue the discussion, please feel free to leave your questions in the Q&A so we can revisit this slide after the webinar.
Awesome. Features that we'll cover: repeating tasks, which was a design pattern that we noticed quite often and have now turned into a rudimentary element. ARRAYUNIQUE formula, we're going to talk about record selection, partial form submissions, lookup, that assigned to example that I highlighted a second ago, project templates, and junction tables. We'll first dive into repeating tasks. Emma, you want to take over on the screen sharing, and I will politely bow out.
Of course. All right. When you're creating recurring tasks in SmartSuite, you have to do this through the means of an automation. And this feature was highly requested because we want to make this as easy as possible. So now you can actually go into the due date field here for a particular record and set that repeating task directly from the record. So how do you do this? It's not necessarily a field type that you can add here, but it lives within a due date. So I already have a due date set, but you can add any due date yourself and create this repeating task through that field. Now, when you go into the due date field, it'll open up in this calendar view. And at the very bottom here, you'll see this icon, and this is the repeating task function. When you open it up, you'll see there's a variety of different schedule options. So it's basically anything you could imagine as far as maybe this is a daily task, maybe this is a weekly client check-in, or maybe it's a specific task that has to be populated after another task is complete. So a set time. And of course, you can also customize this to even get a bi-weekly or quarterly. Now, I will just show you a quick example on weekly and help you understand some of the nuances on this function. Now, first of all, let's say that this task here was due last week. We'll save that due date. Now, as you can see, I have it recurring weekly, and I will set it for Tuesday. Now, Wednesday, because today's Wednesday. Now, something about this task is, let's say that I am a week behind on the task. This function will actually adapt to your delay, and it will not populate the task until the following Wednesday. So that's just something to note, that it will constantly adapt to you being behind and still create that flow of tasks. Now, another thing to note is, let's say that this task was actually completed. So I can go ahead and add my stage, I think it's here, and we'll go ahead and complete one of the tasks. Now that I have this task complete, it will actually go ahead and create a new task in just a second. Since that task has been completed, it will create a new one here, as you can see. There we go. All right, so it will repeat and it's due in the next week. So as you can see, you can actually get pretty creative on, you can select multiple days. And the most important thing to note is you can actually control what information is carried over. So let's say that there's a particular status that's your default or standard for when that task needs to be created. You can indicate that. And most importantly, you can control what information is being carried over. So some of this information may not apply to a new task. So you may not want to carry the same project documents. You may not want the same status reports linked. And moreover, you may not want an hourly rate. Maybe that hasn't been indicated. Now let's go into task level so you can even see another example of how this would occur. Go into the fields to copy. Time tracking log may be an example of something that's unique to that particular task. You'll want to remove it over. But it may be nice if the owner of the task is the same person, it will automatically be assigned to that owner. So through the simple click of the recurring task button and the selection of my schedule, I'm able to basically create an automated workflow for these recurring tasks. I'll hand it off to Jeff now for the formula session.
Awesome. Thank you, Emma. All right, move my screen around just a bit. We see in this project management solution?
Yes.
Cool. So we are going to look at in particular for the ARRAYUNIQUE formula application, we're going to use the website design production. Right now we're looking at our app of tasks grouped by projects. What if, in this example, we want to be able to get a list of all of the task owners at the project level? We'll look at this example for website design production. Like I mentioned, we have myself, Nate, and Rick all listed as owners for each task within projects. But what we want is not exactly what a lookup field would produce for us, because as you see, I'm listed, Nate, and then I'm listed again, and then I'm listed again. I really just want a consolidated list of the folks, and I want them to be unique values. Enter ARRAYUNIQUE. So what we look at here is obviously wrapping it in ARRAYUNIQUE. We say the linked record, field name, period, and then the field that we want to call on. And then we can choose how we want each of these values to be separated in quotations here. Fairly straightforward, but really helpful in a lot of unique situations in which you have duplicate values and you just want, again, that sort of consolidated list feel. Let's say in this next example, we want to be able to select multiple records and we want to change values without having to go in one by one. One thing that I've noticed a lot of folks aren't aware of quite yet is the ability to check a box here, hold shift down and click down the list on a record in which that selection would stop, and it'll highlight all of those different records for you to be able to make mass adjustments as needed, or delete records, or if you want to export them as well. Very cool. Emma, I'll pass it back over to you for partial form submissions.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead into a project form here. So I have a project request form. And let's say that this form is pretty long and complex, may take some time to fill out. With our busy schedules, we may not be able to complete a form in one sitting. So now we are actually able to go in, the person producing the form can go into the settings and toggle the allow resuming the partial submissions. And what this means is that, let's say I have this form link. I'm going to go ahead and start to fill this out. Assign a project manager. And let's say that I'm running out of time. I have a meeting. I need to revisit this form. Assuming I'm in the same browser, I can close out that form and I can actually go ahead and revisit it at a later date. All the information that I've already started inputting is there. Not much more to say about this feature, but it's super convenient and it's been heavily asked for. So hope that's useful in your workflows.
Emma, do we want to step back and address some of the questions that are coming into the Q&A?
Of course.
Grant, you can find the form by actually creating a new view within each application. Very cool.
Okay. Just so you know, forms are views. So I created this view already, but in order to create a new one, you would just go into the view dropdown here and select create new view and then form. And here, all of the fields that you have existing in this app will go ahead and populate to the left. And from there, you can select which ones you would like in your form. You can also add more if you feel like something is missing.
And Dave asked, do we have any recommended books or YouTube videos that address some of the foundational best practices for database design? I'm lucky enough to have had colleagues share some of their tips and tricks with me. Emma, I don't know if you know of any books or YouTube videos directly. I find that there are a lot of YouTube videos that help with specific use cases or example scenarios, but I can follow up on that for you, Dave. Question coming in from Isaac related to due dates. Right now, you can see a sum of time tracked grouped by the due date. Is there a way to see a sum of time tracked by a month, a week, or a day?
Yes. Yes, you would just create a field, and that could be, we could discuss, Isaac, I can reach out to you after. You can create a formula field that will pull the month, and then you can just group by the month and figure out the sum based on that.
Next question coming from Constantine. Why can't we add due date to a form? As of right now, that's not a supported field type within forms.
That's on the roadmap. You can add a date field, just not a due date field currently. We have a few questions coming in about forms, so I just want to clarify. When you submit a form, the data will actually be populated, and I'm going to demonstrate this in a later feature. The data will populate as a record here. Who has access to the forms? Absolutely anyone who has that link. So if you share this link with someone, they don't need to be a SmartSuite user. They can have access and they can input data into your solution.
Next question coming from Chris. Is it possible to have a cascading date feature for records that are already created and associated with each other, like project phases? We're getting ready to roll out dependencies within the next month or so, which will allow you to create that one-to-none relationship between records in the same app. Short answer, we're working on it. We'll have that available to you soon. Okay, I will dive back in to the product here. And so what I want to talk about is the example of having an application for team members and then assigning them to a record, specifically in this example, a task. And so I have a linked record field here that connects me to an app called Employees. So I'll revert over to this other tab that I have here. I have another solution in which I have every employee listed and I'm tying them to a team. And this is what I'm calling Staff Hub. And why this would be important for some folks if you want to be able to measure capacity, if you want to be able to open up a record for an individual employee and see everything about them, all the way down to the tasks that they've been assigned to, the assets that they've been allocated. If you want to see different performance reviews, employee satisfaction reviews, really, if you want to have that one-stop shop, one record for everything about an employee, having linked records tie them to all of those different aspects throughout your workspace is going to be the best way to do that. But then also at the same time, when Jeff Gonzalez comes in here to look at his tasks, I don't want him to have to go in and search for his tasks in any way. I want him to be able to click on my work and see everything that he has coming down the pipe. And so what we're going to do here is implement a design pattern that I've seen done very well and quite often, in that I want to have this linked record here clarifying who the task owner is. And then I want to look up the assign to field that actually lives here in the employees app. So Jeff, it's this assign to value. Obviously these names don't match up, but just for example's sake, we're going to roll with it. And when I look these up, they actually can be filtered dynamically from right here. So if I were to say assign to from employees and I want to filter it down on that, I can do exactly that. This doesn't actually populate anything in my work yet, though. It is a lookup value. That lookup value is registering as an assign to field, which is awesome and allows us to do this dynamic filtering. But I really want it to populate here in my work. And this is where we're going to implement an automation. I'll dive directly in here. And let's look at the assign tasks automation. And so everything is based off of if then statements. So if or when this happens, then I want you to do this. So our if statement, very simple. If task owner, that linked record field, changes in any way, then I want you to go ahead and update that record. And how I want you to update is I want you to change the assign to field that's titled owner, that's static, that lives only in that record, that's also tied to the due date and status. And I want you to populate it with the value that we have within that lookup field that's titled assign to from employees. And so this is what allows us to get the best of both worlds in terms of having that app for all of our individual employees, the ability to look at everything that they're working on, all the information about them, and then also still populate in my work at the individual task level. Hope that's helpful. If we don't have any questions there, let's dive into project templates, another design pattern.
All right. So I'm asked this quite a bit on several of my calls, probably at least once a week. So I figured it was important to share. Now, let's say that your company has several projects that occur, and these projects have the same tasks and subtasks. So these are routine projects. And let's say you have a couple of these, and you want to create a project template. So essentially, when this project is created, the entire workflow will begin, it will be assigned to the prospective people, and then it will go ahead and populate those subtasks and assignments. So you can easily do this through an automation. And I've already set up the automation today, but I'll walk through how I did it. The first thing that I've done is created a single select field. So this is a field type. I've added it here. And this is used to classify what type of project this is. So these different types are the different templates that I've created. So maybe this one's a design project, maybe this is a product project, website project. Those are templates that I've created. Now, how are these projects coming in? They can potentially come in through a form. Your internal team has a form, as I showed earlier, and I'll show you how that automation will run. Now, it's important that each project type has a set number of tasks, and these tasks are repetitive and they happen every time. So in the automation here, I'm going to create one for the first project type. So this is my initial project template. The automation, all you would need to specify is that when this record is created, and that particular type of project is our first type of project, our first template, it's going to populate or create records in the task app. So let me back up here quickly. I have a projects app and a tasks app. The project will be created and the task will live in here and populate. You'll also notice that I have a subtask field here, or a checklist field. We also want tasks to be populated within subtasks to be populated within each task. How do we do this? So within each task record or creation of the task record, I've specified that I want it to populate in the task app. I can title that task. I've titled it project type 1, task 1. Most important thing here is I've linked it to the project. This icon here symbolizes the link, and you'll always want to match the link to that title field, which is this box here. That will allow me to be able to see what tasks are a part of which project. Directly from here, I can assign an owner. I can indicate a status. And from this checklist field, I can actually predetermine the checklist values that I want to be pre-populated. Now I can go ahead and type these in. I can assign a due date and of course assign a person. So I can add as many checklist items as I want, assign a due date for the entire task, and I can continue and do this for many other tasks. I've created 2 for now here. So I've also done this for project type 2, same scenario, but I've selected when the project type is 2. And I've created these new tasks based on this new type of project and the different subtasks that are a part of those tasks. So let me show you what this looks like when a project form. I can go ahead and submit a project. I'll call this project task. I'll assign myself as a manager. These were pre-filled from before. I'll go ahead and assign or select the project type 1, and I will leave the rest for now. Once I submit that form, I will be able to see it created as a project here. Here we go, project test. I can create a due date if needed, and I can include anything about the project. Now, since this has triggered the project type 1 template, I can go into tasks and I can actually see the project tasks populated. It's linked back to the project and it's created these 2 tasks, assigned myself and a due date, and it's also created these subtasks. So I can go in and add as many as I want in the automation, but that's just a simple start. Please let me know if you have any questions on that. I'm happy to be more detailed. I can wait for them to come in and I will show you the last. This one is a design pattern that I'm also frequently asked about on calls and just in general, people looking for creative ideas how to organize their order management in SmartSuite. So this is actually exactly what a function table is. And this is an essential part or essential concept in relational database design. So I'm going to show you the use case of order management. So a lot of times the question is phrased as, I have a lot of products or services with their prices, and I am looking to create orders that have different products and services, the different quantities of them, and of course, their prices are different as well. So this can be a complicated thing to picture in a database. So I'm going to show you how you can easily set this up. I can share the solution with you as well, so so you can use it on your own. Now, all I've done here is I've created a project and service app. And you can think of this as your database for storing how much each project or service is worth. So their amount. You can add as many fields as you want here, but I've kept it simple. I've titled the product and service, and I have the amount that each one is going to be worth for our clients. Now, there are two levels of this junction table. We have items. Line items are basically what connect. They're the junction connector between the orders and the product and services. Now, in orders, we have several line items. Now, how am I able to pull over the value of each product and service, but also determine the quantity so I can create the multiple line items in one order? Now, I can easily do this and what we're doing right now is we're actually creating an order in the form of line items. So let's say that my order has, for product and service 1, we have 20 of them. For product and service 2, there's 15. And what it's doing here is it's actually calculating the line item total. How is it doing that? Since we've linked the product and service, and we know that the currency amount lives there, it's creating that, it's pulling that amount, and it's multiplying it by the quantity, just through creating that linkage and relationship. So lastly, I will link the last product and service. So I have these 3 here. I'll go ahead and delete, I'll keep these here actually. I'll go ahead and create an order. So as you can see, I have a linked record here to the order. And what this does is it helps me indicate what line items are a part of each order. So I can go ahead and say, okay, these line items that I've just created, I'm going to actually create a new order. So I have the first order here, but I'm going to create a new one. This is going to be our second order. Upon creating that linkage, you can see from the orders end, we have these product and services. These are actually line items. So within these line items here, we are able to capture the detail of the quantity and the price, create that relationship, then we can then sum it into the order total. So this is a simple formula I can dive into if people have questions. This is basically taking the sum of all those line items, multiplying the price by the quantity to get that order total. So super simple example of a junction table in SmartSuite, but I see this use case asked about a lot, so I thought I would demonstrate. Please let me know if you have any questions, or Jeff, if you have any questions as well.
You articulated that very well. Easy to make.
It's a confusing
junction
one.
tables. Yeah, it's easy to make those complicated. Well done. We do have some questions in the queue. One coming in from Gorkum that says, can you print only one group? Which I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that, Gorkum, if you want to rephrase potentially. And then we have another one. Is there a log about all recent features implemented and the ones to be in the future? I'm pretty impressed about what is possible on SmartSuite, yet I believe I will be aware only on the features I will see when I meet them, probably using 5% of the feature sets, which accounts for maybe most users. So it's all good. 5% is still an awesome mark to be at. Emma, where would you guide Oliver to?
Yes. Okay, so there's 2 options here. For a high-level view and for a more broad picture on what's on the roadmap, we actually have a roadmap link. So I'm going to go ahead and go into, and I'll send the link in the chat, or maybe Brian could, that'll be helpful. So this is our product roadmap, but you're able to go in and search. So let's say there's a particular feature you're looking for, you can search it. You can also see the specific features that are in progress and planned under review, but you can also see what's completed as well. So if you go into, I believe, to go in feature requests, trending, complete. So let's say you aren't aware of a lot of features, you want to explore, all the different features. This is the longest list you can really find. And if you click into each one, there's an explanation on a use case, why someone wanted this feature, and maybe an explanation on why this feature is valuable. So I'd recommend visiting this long list here of completed ones. If you're interested on what's coming or what's under review, and if you've actually voted on your own. So let's say that I'm interested in one of these features, I can actually just click the up arrow, and I've now created my own feature request. So this allows you to track the status. Let's say that this goes from the plan to in progress. It'll send you an email and tell you that feature is in progress. If you're looking for a running daily or almost daily update on what features are being released, you can visit our community. So it's just community.smartsuite.com. And here you will see in the what's new section, so you can actually do product updates. It will also appear on the homepage, but here's a long list of the product updates that we've had over the past year or so. You can click into here and it will actually describe the feature and link to help content. So this is a running list of all of them. Maybe easier to locate because we actually have them titled and grouped, and it's more organized than all of the noise on the roadmap. So I hope those two places were helpful and is what you're looking for. Yes, this session is recorded. It's recorded, it will go on YouTube by today, probably in the afternoon, and it will also be sent to you tomorrow morning to your email.
Awesome. And Grant asked, my question related to being able to find a partially submitted form. How would the person submitting the form find the partially completed form again?
It's just through the same link. So the same way they access the form, whether it's embedded, it's interesting because I put an embedded form and it's actually pre-populated for me in the embed as well, which is nice if you have it on a dashboard. But let's say the form comes in as a link. All you have to do is access that same link.
And then how would this relate to hundreds of follow-ups for projects that are bid monthly and you want to assign follow-ups for each? Or I'm guessing we're going back to the repeating tasks example. So I typed into the chat on the side. And so I believe I have a visual of what you're talking about. Obviously, I'd need to get into the weeds to be able to best answer this. It's likely going to be somewhat different. And so if you have follow-ups for projects that are bid monthly, it tells me that we likely want to have some sort of automation to create the records themselves, but then we want an automation that assesses the conditions of that record, conditions being related to likely a date field within that record that says if a record is matching conditions where that specific date, whether it's the date it was created or a date that you set is a week out from now, or is 2 weeks past when we just created this date, as a reminder to then follow up. You can have it send you an email, Slack, Microsoft Teams message, up to you. It sounds like you have something in particular there that I need a little bit more context on. So maybe schedule a time with our team. We can help you out. Anything to add to that, Emma, that you feel like I missed?
No.
Cool.
Yeah, please use this as a resource if you have questions. And I know this is a quick overview, but you can watch the recording again. You can also reach out to us. We're happy to help and we want you to continue the conversation, of course. When will the Control Z feature come? That's coming. It's on our roadmap.
We're working on it, Miguel. Yeah, we want it to. It's coming very soon. Question from Chris regarding the cost formula. Oh, yeah, regarding the cost formula, can you format the formula field to reflect a currency or cost?
Yes.
So, yeah.
Go ahead.
No, you were gonna, I think you were gonna share your screen.
I'm going to send formula, or Brian can. He also has a formula, but basically it will be a text and it'll show up as a text, but there is a way of formula. And someone is asking, Yeah, Brian will send that in the chat for you. There is a way to format it. There currently isn't a way to actually make it a currency field if it's a formula field, but it's just a matter of how you format the field.
And then last question we have here, even if they're not a paid user and we already have 3 users assigned, Emmanuel, apologies, we stepped back to this question after we covered that bit of material. If you want to rephrase or send our team a direct email, that would be super helpful so we can answer your question. I don't think we have any more questions coming, Emma. They took it easy on us today. Very cool.
I'm looking through the chat to see if there's anything so far.
Loving the community. Awesome. Yeah. So not to just completely bombard you with terminology, but the design patterns piece is an awesome thing to share in the community. If you stumble upon a way to be able to configure some of these elements that we have in the platform that you think would be super valuable for really anybody else using the platform, feel free to share those findings in the community. That's what that's there for. If anybody searches, how in the world do I assign records automatically with using linked records, like in the example shown, we want that to be a home of all that good information. So feel free to feed that. And
if you also have any questions, live questions in particular, and you want a more personal setting, we have office hours every day at 9 a.m. Pacific time. So I see people find great value in those because you learn from others what they're building. You can also ask personalized use case questions and we can walk through how to set that up.
Emmanuel came back in reference to forms. If an unpaid guest user enters information, is it possible for them to update, modify those fields afterwards without providing them a license? No. So once a record's created, you need to have, outside of the status field, a paid license to be able to update or add that already exists. If you want them to create a new record, you can obviously use a form to be able to do, but that would be where that line is.
If that's really important to you, you could, if the record is assigned to them, they won't be able to necessarily modify the fields. They can change the status and they can leave comments. So let's say that they made a mistake on it. They can somehow communicate with you if they're assigned to that record and they're a guest. But you need to ensure that when they fill out the form, the assigned to field is there and they've been selected so that they see that particular record.
Awesome. Thanks everybody for attending. Again, any questions, feel free to chat to us directly, send an email to support@smartsuite.com, join us in our community, watch our YouTube videos. We're doing quite a bit to make sure that all of you know exactly how to build what it is that you have a vision of. And if you need a little bit more support, knock on our door. Thanks for coming. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, Jack. Thanks everyone for joining.